during the National Day holiday. My husband, John Williams, broke our pre-arranged travel plan again. He suddenly went on a business trip outside the province. But then I saw a photo on the WeChat moments equivalent to Facebook posts in the US context of his assistant, Sophie Brown. In the photo, they were lying side by side on the beach, sunbathing. The caption read, "The CEO accompanied me to admire the moon last holiday and watched the sea this holiday. Guys, help me think about where I should let him accompany me to play during the next festival. P.S. I'm looking for a place where nice pictures can be easily taken. The CEO looks so handsome in the photos." The comment section was full of suggestions. I paused for 2 seconds and calmly commented, "The Civil Affairs Bureau. You can not only take great pictures there but also get a marriage certificate." My colleagues who knew the situation went crazy. They kept sending me messages, speculating about how jealous I'd be this time and how I'd make a big scene with my husband. John called me first, his tone full of impatience. "Why are you so petty? What's wrong with just sunbathing together? Can't I relax during a business trip? It's just that I didn't accompany you. Is it necessary to make such a fuss? Delete your comment right away. Or what will people think of her? Besides, we're already married. There will be so many holidays in the future. I'll accompany you next time." Listening to his same old excuses, I couldn't help but scoff. There won't be a next time. When the National Day holiday is over, we'll have our divorce certificates in hand. I hung up the phone. When I got back to the company, everyone was laughing and speculating about how John, the CEO, would punish me this time. Would he punish me to buy milk tea for his assistant again? Or would he deduct my half-year bonus as compensation for his assistant's emotional distress? They stopped talking when they saw me coming back, but their looks at me were still full of mockery. I was used to it. After all, everyone knew the complicated relationship among John, Sophie, and me. Emily Johnson. John was my husband, but he was extremely partial to Sophie. He hired Sophie into the company out of the ordinary, giving her a lot of resources. But Sophie always messed things up. However, John always believed in her and tried every means to encourage her. Once, he even gave her a project that I had chased for half a year. The profit that could have been over $1 million became only $100,000 because of her carelessness. But John still praised her wildly, saying that making a profit was a good start and he believed Sophie would get better. At the same time, I just forgot to adjust the font size of the contract. Although it didn't affect the final result, I was deducted my whole year bonus. John said he was trying to avoid suspicion, so he had to be strict with me. But that night, I saw a post on Sophie's Facebook. John had transferred the bonus that was originally mine to Sophie's account. I angrily went to John, but he just shrugged it off. Sophie has only been in the company for half a year. Of course, she needs some proper rewards. And you've earned so much over the years. Do you really care about this little bit of money? I argued. It's not about the money. John nodded in agreement verbally but impatiently waved his hand. We're husband and wife. The company is mine, and that means it's yours. As my wife, you should support my work. Seeing that I was still a bit down, he offered to accompany me on a trip. But since Sophie joined the company, every time John promised to accompany me, Sophie would suddenly mess up the plan. When we planned to watch a movie, Sophie would drag John into overtime work that night. When John was going to accompany me on my birthday, Sophie would cry about how difficult the client was. I would wait alone at the appointed place for 2 hours, and all I'd get in the end was a phone call from John, apologizing for breaking the promise. So at first, I didn't believe him, but before the holiday, John packed his suitcase, booked the air tickets, and planned the itinerary. I still chose to believe him this time. As expected, he disappointed me again, but this time, I wasn't angry. Under everyone's expectant looks, I walked into the HR office and submitted my resignation letter that I had printed a month ago. The HR was a bit surprised. You're leaving? I nodded. Then I need to report this to Mr. Williams. With that, the HR was about to send a message. I calmly said, call him. Sophie was so funny and always made John very happy. So when he was with Sophie, he usually wouldn't be distracted to check messages. Every time I sent him a message, I often had to wait until the next day to get a reply. I didn't want to wait anymore. Reluctant but due to my position, the HR dialed John's phone. Mr. Williams. Ms. Johnson wants to. Before she could finish her sentence, John interrupted coldly. Just handle it according to the company's process. There's no need to ask me. As an HR, do you still need me to teach you the company's process? Obviously. John was still angry about my comment. The HR didn't dare to say a word. John Williams added, also, let me say it again. For non-urgent matters, send a message, not a call. With that, he hung up without mercy. But in the instant the call ended, I still heard Sophie Brown's familiar voice. John, why are you so angry? Was it Emily Johnson calling? The HR manager, having been scolded, looked at me with a pale face but didn't dare to speak too harshly. You heard what John said. Take back your resignation form. I'll pretend I never saw it. And I won't mention this to anyone. Clearly, HR didn't believe I would actually quit. She thought this was just another one of my threats against John. Like before. After all, John and I had been married for 8 years, co-founding this company after our wedding. With the company name even combining characters from both our names, no one would think I'd really leave. I shook my head firmly. Then let's follow the procedure. HR looked surprised and tried to persuade me a couple more times. But seeing I was determined, she stamped my resignation approval and handled the handover. News of my resignation spread quickly through the company. And while everyone was shocked, they all agreed I was trying to threaten John with quitting and had overplayed it. I didn't explain. Just packed my things and calmly walked out. Just as I reached the company entrance, HR suddenly ran toward me, phone in hand. Wait. John is calling and wants to speak to you. Murmurs erupted around us. Someone laughed. Didn't expect that playing hard to get actually worked. John really fell for it. After 8 years of marriage, even a dog would have developed some affection by now. Hearing the whispered mockery, I paused, then took the phone. The call was on speaker. And John's voice soon reached everyone's ears, starting with an accusation. Emily, why didn't you answer my call? What if something important got delayed? Would you take responsibility? Go to Sophie's desk right now. There's a document that needs delivering to a client. Hurry up. They're waiting. The crowd fell silent, then burst into low chuckles. I held the phone loosely. Even though I'd long known John no longer cared about me, it still stung. Not long ago, to make it easier for Sophie to boss me around, had promoted her to my level, claiming it was for mutual support but actually dumping all her menial tasks onto me. Now that my resignation must have reached him, he was still ordering me to run errands for Sophie. I scoffed, no longer willing to endure this unequal relationship. Instead of agreeing, I fired back. Why should I be responsible for Sophie's work? Caught off guard by my sudden question, John hesitated. Before he could retaliate, I added, besides, I don't have time. Whoever owns the document can deliver it themselves. With that, I hung up and returned the phone to HR. Then, amid the stunned and astonished stares, I strode straight out of the company. Not long after leaving the building, I glanced back at the office that had been my home for 8 years. Through the window, I saw the orchid ID given John wilting on his office sill, while the money tree Sophie had gifted him thrived with vibrant life. I smiled faintly, pulled out my phone, and made a call. I've thought about the project you mentioned earlier. I'm in. I'll join your team. John and I met through a matchmaker and hit it off instantly. We married in a rush just 2 months later, shortly after the wedding. when I learned about his startup idea. I admired it so much that I quit my high-paying job, bringing my skills and all my savings to co-found the company with him. To ease his burden, I set my salary low even now. With the company nearing an IPO, it's only risen by 1,000 over the years. Other firms tried to poach me with offers 5 times John's pay, but I always refused. Not just because I saw the company as our child, but also because during our toughest times, I fell ill. To scrape together my surgery funds, John begged people humbly, even nearly kneeling before doctors. I truly believed him when he said we were partners, a shared destiny, inseparable. But after Sophie showed up, everything changed. He publicly humiliated me for her sake, and during meals out, he started insisting on splitting the bill, something he'd never done before. Not long ago, my decade-old car broke down. When I went to fix it, I was short on cash, so I temporarily withdrew 1,000 from our joint account. John was furious when he found out, not only criticizing me for reckless spending but also changing the account password without my consent. Emily, I know you're entitled to that money, but our lives are just beginning. There will be plenty more expenses ahead. Are you really going to keep living off past savings? What happened to you? I much preferred the driven, ambitious person you used to be. He claimed to despise women who relied on men. Yet I soon discovered he'd given Sophie a Topothaline new car for her birthday. When I confronted him, he made excuses, calling it a reward for her progress. But all those years I'd slaved over tough, high-value projects like pulling 3 all-nighters to earn the company millions. John only ever gave me verbal praise. What kind of progress reward is worth a $50,000 car? I was finally disappointed with John Williams. I had originally planned to part on good terms, taking advantage of this trip to face him and propose leaving, to put a perfect end to our 8-year marriage. But, thinking of this, I let out a self-mocking laugh on the other end of the phone. After hearing I accepted the job offer, the other party was overjoyed and hastily sent over the contract, even wanting me to fly over that same day and start at the company the next morning. They showed great sincerity. Our boss John has tried to recruit you over a dozen times. He's genuinely eager to have you join. I thanked them but decided to set my start date for after the holiday. I love traveling. Love seeing mountains and waters. John used to happily accompany me, but after Sophie Brown appeared, we never traveled together again, and my hopes were dashed time after time. This time, John broke his promise, but I couldn't break my promise to myself. Even without John, the first still wanted to continue the journey on my own. Just after hanging up, Sophie sent me a message. Sorry, Emily. Since you're about to divorce John soon, I really shouldn't bother you or him anymore. But this trip was his idea, and I didn't want to disappoint him. By the way, your divorce certificate should be ready soon. Right. John's birthday is coming. UPO could give him the divorce papers as a gift. I think he'd be thrilled, since he never loved you anyway. She then attached a photo. John and her had taken a set of wedding-style pictures on the beach. In the photo, John lifted her high, his smile brighter than the sun behind them. I knew Sophie was provoking me. She was aware of my divorce plans. In fact, she was the one who handed the divorce papers to John for his signature. Back then, Sophie had dug the agreement out of my desk, her face full of challenge. Emily, are you really divorcing? Want me to help get John to sign it? I'm afraid you might burst into tears on the spot if you see him sign. She meant to embarrass me and provoke a reaction, but I nodded. Sure. John didn't trust me. He scrutinized every contract I gave him as if under a magnifying glass. But Sophie was different. John trusted her completely. After she handed him the papers, he signed without even looking. This divorce went smoother than our wedding. I didn't know if John loved me, but with Sophie's constant provocations and displays of ownership in front of me, I believed he was fully aware. Given that this marriage had lost all meaning, I didn't reply. Instead, I called the marriage registry and learned the certificate would be ready in a week just after the holiday ended. I went home, tore down our photo wall, threw out everything related to me, packed my luggage, bought a plane ticket, and set off on a solo journey. On the first day of the holiday, I went to Dolly. This was a trip John and I had planned 3 years ago. Back then, Sophie had just started at the company. Business was booming, and John said we couldn't slack off, so our plan was shelved and never revived. On the second day, I stopped at Tibet's Potala Palace. John was afraid of altitude sickness and had always avoided coming here. Later, I wore him down, exhausting myself to land 20 projects in a year, and he finally agreed to join me. But right before departure, Sophie got sick, and he said she had no friends here, so as her boss, he had to take care of her. The trip was cancelled. I headed north, and on the last day of the holiday, I reached the final stop of my journey, Saram Lake, the place we'd originally planned to visit. Only then did I realize that the scenery I'd longed for over 3 years but missed due to various reasons could be fully experienced in just 7 days. Finally, I changed my return flight to the day after tomorrow and called the marriage registry to update one divorce certificate's delivery address to my current guest house. As the holiday ended, I prepared to embrace my new life, with no intention of looking back or seeing John one last time. But I never expected such a coincidence. That evening, while stepping out of the guest house to experience the local bonfire gathering, I spotted John and Sophie right there in the crowd. They were sitting around the fire, eating barbecue. John, eyes full of laughter, fed freshly grilled meat to Sophie. Despite his usual germophobia, he naturally took the cup she'd used and drank the goat milk wine inside. Even during our honeymoon, John insisted on separate chopsticks for shared dishes and never shared a cup with me, saying it was unhygienic and killed his appetite. But now, he was eating with relish. I knew I should avoid them and leave, but this large bonfire event only happened once a month, and I didn't want them to ruin my plans. With that thought, I decided to find a spot far from them. But John noticed me first, stood up, and walked over, his tone impatient. "What are you doing here? Didn't I say I'd take you next time?" I didn't speak, my gaze falling on the local-style bracelets he and Sophie wore. Long ago, I'd said that if we ever traveled here, we had to buy 2 bracelets and engrave our names on them. Now, I saw the one he wore, with a bead engraved Sophie. Noticing my stare, Sophie deliberately twisted her bracelet to reveal the bead engraved John. I sneered inwardly. It wasn't surprising at all. Seeming to sense my gaze, John Williams instinctively hid the bracelet behind his back, avoiding eye contact. "Sophie Brown and I happened to pass by here on a business trip, and since you've always wanted to come, I thought I'd scout it out for you first. Well, since you're already here, let's grab something to eat." As he spoke, he turned to Sophie Brown. "Change tomorrow's flight to 2 days later." Sophie Brown's eyes flickered with dissatisfaction as she looked at me. Joking lightly, Emily Johnson arrived at just the right time, right on the last day of the holiday. But John Williams, the first, need to get back early for work. So just change one ticket. You stay and show Emily around a bit more. She pulled out her phone. John Williams frowned slightly and said decisively, "Never mind. Don't change the tickets after all. Work comes first." Emily Johnson, your timing is off too. Wait for the next holiday. The company is about to go public soon, and we can't afford any slip-ups now. Hearing this, Sophie Brown shot me a triumphant winner look, perhaps fearing I might get jealous again. John Williams added to Sophie Brown, "Book her return ticket too, and have her sit next to me." Before Sophie Brown could respond, I spoke up first. "No need." A distant roar of flames swallowed my last words. John Williams frowned. "What?" Sophie Brown's brown eyes gleamed slyly. "The party's starting. John, go watch it. I'll handle Emily's situation." John Williams clearly wasn't focused on me either. He nodded, gave a few casual instructions, and followed the crowd forward. As soon as he left, Sophie Brown revealed her true colors, crossing her arms as she scrutinized me. Emily, didn't you decide to get divorced? Now you've deliberately tracked us down by getting info from H. What's the point? I knew she misunderstood. But with the divorce certificate coming soon, I couldn't be bothered to explain. Sophie Brown pressed on, her eyes turning malicious. Since you insist on interfering, let's see who John really chooses. Before I could react, she shoved me hard. I lost my balance and tumbled onto the blazing bonfire. The searing pain made me cry out. The sound drew many people's attention. John Williams heard the commotion too. Seeing me on the bonfire, his face paled for a moment as he rushed to help me up. But instantly, he spotted Sophie Brown beside him, clutching her hand with a pitiful expression. What happened to your hand? John Williams immediately turned and went to her side. Worriedly taking her hand, Sophie Brown whined. Just now, for some reason, Emily suddenly backed into the fire, and sparks burned my hand too. John Williams looked at her with heartache, blowing on her merely reddened knuckles. Then he turned a cold gaze on me, his tone devoid of its earlier gentleness. Emily, you need to control your jealousy. I really thought you'd changed, but now you're trying to frame Sophie Brown like this. Apologize to her right now, or I'll make sure you're on the next flight home. Got it. I clutched my blistering foot. Too pained to speak. John Williams took it as defiance. Don't think playing the victim will get me on your side. This was your fault to begin with. He was about to say more when the inn's front desk clerk, a fair-skinned young man, stepped outside. Emily Johnson. Your divorce certificate is here. John Williams blanched, looking toward the front desk. What? The clerk ignored him. Having stayed a few extra days, he recognized me. Seeing me on the ground, he hurried over to help me up, asking concernedly if I needed to see a doctor. I shook my head and took the divorce certificate from his hand. The young man said apologetically, You told me to contact you immediately when it arrived, but I couldn't reach you by phone. And I'm about to clock out soon. I didn't want you to miss it today, so I came looking for you. That burn on your foot looks serious. Let me take you to the hospital, it's nearby. He helped me to my feet, but after just 2 steps, John Williams blocked our path, demanding again. What divorce certificate? The young man chuckled lightly. What else could it be? A divorce certificate is just that, proof of divorce. Or did you think it was something else? It might have been my imagination. But his words seemed to carry a faint sharpness. John Williams didn't catch it. His eyes fixed on the green-covered document in my hand. He snatched it without hesitation, flipped it open, and turned deathly pale at the sight of the name and photo. But quickly, as if struck by a thought, he sneered. Still acting, aren't you? Bringing a fake divorce certificate to scare me. Don't think I'll fall for it. Perhaps I'd braced myself long ago. Faced with John Williams' repeated distrust, I stayed calm, no longer feeling the old hurt. I said quietly, Since you've seen the divorce certificate, let's settle this here. John Williams, we're divorced. And the certificate is real. If you don't believe me, you can call the county clerk's office right now to verify. I said calmly from start to finish, perhaps sensing that there was no reason for me to lie at this point. John Williams' face suddenly turned pale. He stood frozen in place for a moment before asking, Why? Who agreed to a divorce? I didn't speak, but he seemed to understand and demanded, Just because I didn't go on that trip with you due to a business trip, you want to divorce me? Is such a small thing really worth it? I looked at his furious face. I was all too familiar with that line. This time, I didn't argue with him hysterically but instead smiled lightly. Perhaps you don't think it's worth it. And I can't force you to change your mind. But the reason doesn't matter anymore. I'm giving you your freedom. I had thought that divorcing him and making room for Sophie Brown would make him happy. But instead, he got even angrier. tearing the divorce certificate to shreds in seconds. Emily Johnson. I didn't agree to divorce you. Our marriage required both our consents. How can you just decide to end it on your own? You'll come with me tomorrow to remarry and undo the divorce. Seeing his attitude, I was a bit surprised but quickly shook my head. Impossible. John's face flushed white, as if he was about to explode again, when Sophie hurried over, took his hand, and whispered something in his ear. In a few words, his anger subsided. Seeing that, I didn't stay any longer and turned to limp away. The guy at the front desk was worried about infection and wanted to take me to the hospital, but I declined his kindness. John used to be careless and often hurt himself. After a few incidents, I developed the habit of carrying medicine when I went out. Plus, minor burns like this had happened many times when I was learning to cook for him, so I knew how to handle it. The guy hesitated, but as he escorted me to my room and saw no one around, he said, I shouldn't meddle in your personal affairs, but there's something I need to say. I saw your argument earlier, and I deliberately handed over the divorce certificate. I've seen your husband and that girl beside him together many times over the last few days. They're always coming and going together, sharing the same room. I even overheard them planning to wait until the company goes public before divorcing you. Hearing that, I understood. No wonder John had reacted so strongly after learning about the divorce. I thanked him and returned to my room. After tending to my wound, I started packing my bags. I knew John would come looking for me again, but not this early. Just as I was about to rest, my door knocked. Thinking it was the inn staff, I didn't think much of it, but when I opened the door, there stood John at the entrance, holding a takeout box. He glanced at my bandaged foot and pursed his lips. How's your injury? Feeling better? His voice was gentle and caring. I remembered it had been at least 3 years since I'd heard him speak to me like that. When I didn't respond, he added, I noticed you didn't eat much today, so I went and bought some local specialties. Emily, let's talk this through properly. I smiled. There shouldn't be anything left to discuss. I've already resigned from your company. We're divorced now. The division of assets followed the prenuptial agreement. You shouldn't have any objections and we have no children. I don't want to divorce you. John cut in before I could finish, his voice a bit strained. He pressed his lips together and went on. The external things are clearly divided. But what about our 8 years together? We've been married for 8 years. Emily, you might be able to let go, but I can't. He gazed at me deeply, as if he were the victim and I had heartlessly abandoned him for no reason. I found it amusing. If you divorce me now and marry Sophie, in 8 years, you two will have that same deep bond. Or it could be even stronger than ours, I added. But John seemed furious, biting his lip and struggling to contain his anger. I knew it was because of Sophie. But I've already explained I have nothing to do with her. I chuckled softly. Nothing to do with her. Then why did you divert all resources to her? Make excuses about business trips to stand me up time and again for her sake. And now share a room with her. John, do you even believe that yourself when you say nothing? John's face turned pale. The inn was out of rooms. I scoffed. Really? What a coincidence. Should we go down and check if there are any rooms available? Saying that, I took a step toward the door, as if to leave. John panicked and tried to make excuses, but I anticipated him and pressed on. Even if this place is full, aren't there other inns nearby? John, do you remember when we faced the same issue on our pre-marriage trip? What did you do back then? You took me around almost the entire city, and at the time, I was exhausted. I promised you I'd sleep on the couch, but you refused without hesitation. You told me that a gentleman doesn't stand under a dangerous wall, and before deciding to marry, you'd ensure not to cross the line. So why are you standing under that dangerous wall now? Do you think the wall won't collapse on you? Or is it because you've long known it's not a dangerous wall, but your own wall? I said unhurriedly. And John Williams' face almost lost all color. There was no trace of sympathy left in my eyes as I asked him calmly, "What else do you want to talk about? I can chat with you properly." John was speechless. He gritted his teeth and finally said, "Emily Johnson, if you insist on thinking this way, I have no choice." With that, he turned and stormed off angrily. I stopped him. "Wait a minute." A flicker of hope appeared in John's eyes, and just as he was about to speak, I pointed at the food he brought. "Take this stuff away. I'm afraid eating dirty things will give me diarrhea." John glared at me, grabbed the items even more furiously, and slammed the door shut with a deafening bang when he left. That night, he proactively posted on his social media feed a 9-photo grid collage, one of which was a smiling selfie of him and Sophie Brown. The caption read, "Suddenly I look back. That person is there in the dim light." The comments section exploded. Previously, Sophie Brown often posted photos with John, accompanied by ambiguous captions, even though everyone knew what was going on. Since John never spoke up, people kept it vague. But this time, it was John himself who made the post. Everyone chimed in with comments. "Is this an official announcement? Congratulations. Finally made it official. So does this mean John really divorced Emily?" Under each comment, John didn't say much, just replied with a facepalm emoji and a playful emoji. I knew he was trying to provoke me on purpose. But in reality, I wasn't paying attention to him anymore. Even this social media post was something a friend later sent me, asking what was going on. By the time I saw the messages, I had already arrived in the city where the new company was located and completed the onboarding procedures. The new company's benefits and compensation were nearly 10 times better than before. On my first day, the director even threw me a lavish welcome dinner. After a few rounds of drinks, the director happily patted my shoulder like we were old buddies. When the event ended, he personally drove me home. On the way back, John called me. I meant to reject the call, but I was so dizzy from drinking that I accidentally answered. John's voice came through. "Emily, we've been at this for so long. Your anger must be fading by now. Let's call a truce." "Okay. I know you caused this whole scene, including quitting your job, because of Sophie Brown. I just fired her. That should satisfy you, right? I promise you, once you're back, it'll not only raise your salary but also." The director was sitting right beside me. At the mention of salary, his eyes widened like bells, and he jolted awake, snatching the phone from my hand. "Forget it. Emily has already joined our company. We're offering the highest industry benefits and compensation. No one's poaching her." Without waiting for a reply, the director hung up and immediately blocked and deleted the number. He was too drunk to hand the phone back to me before passing out again. I was torn between laughter and tears as I took the phone from him and put it away. John and I were done. I should have deleted his number long ago, but I'd been too busy with the new job. Now was just as good a time as any. I thought John would be too angry to call back. But just after I dropped the director off and was getting ready for bed, John called again with a different number. By the time I noticed, there were several missed calls and multiple messages from John. Perhaps knowing had gone too far before, he didn't question why I blocked his number. Instead, his tone was humble. "Emily, I know I was wrong. I was out of my mind to treat you that way. Can you forgive me? Come back. I really miss you. I love you. If you come back, I'll listen to you on everything this time. Nothing like this will ever happen again. I found out what Sophie Brown did and how she was always targeting you. I'm furious, and I swear I'll never contact her again. Emily, I'm sorry. Can you forgive me one last time?" The content of the message was within my expectations. Unfortunately, it's too late for him to realize his mistake now. I deleted the message and then dragged the number into the blacklist. Next, I focused on handling new work matters. Without the subtle relationship with John Williams and Sophie Brown, and without the ridicule and mockery from everyone, my colleagues were incredibly warm and welcoming. when starting on a new project. They would point out the key highlights and challenges. On regular workdays, they would warmly remind everyone in the group chat about impending rain, advising us to bring umbrellas and warm clothing. I recalled a time when I was on vacation and it suddenly started raining. But John had forgotten his umbrella. Worried about him, I rushed to the office near quitting time to give him my own umbrella. However, by the end of the day, he was still drenched like a drowned rat. My heart ached for him, and I asked what had happened. He said he had lost the umbrella. But I didn't find out until the next day that John had given the only umbrella to Sophie. Perhaps even John himself didn't realize how his protectiveness towards Sophie had become a habit, ingrained in his every action. Now, free from the daily pain and torment, my mood was much lighter. What I didn't expect, though, was that John would actively seek me out that day. I had just gotten off work and was planning to meet friends for a movie. As I stepped out of the company building, I saw John waiting at the entrance. He looked gaunt. And despite always caring about his appearance, he had large dark circles under his eyes, appearing exhausted and haggard. For a moment, I almost didn't recognize him. Seeing me, John quickly rushed forward. Before I could react, he pulled me into a tight embrace. Emily Johnson. Do you really hate me that much? So much that you wouldn't even reply to my messages? Do you know how torturous this time has been for me? I'm serious. I'm not lying. I miss you so much. He choked up, tears streaming down his cheeks. In the past, every time he cried, my heart would soften and I'd give in. But this time, I just expressionlessly pulled him off me. I don't hate you. Before any hope could flicker in John's eyes, my words poured down like a bucket of cold water. But I don't love you either. Honestly, to me now, you're just a familiar stranger. How much you suffer, how sad you are, how regretful, how in love, it's all irrelevant to me now. John, stop contacting me. John refused to accept it, shaking his head vigorously. I don't believe you could be so cruel to me. Clearly, he was prepared for persistent pestering. Seeing this, I didn't explain further, just said calmly, I already have a boyfriend. So whether you believe it or not, stop bothering me. I don't want my boyfriend to misunderstand. As if struck by lightning, John froze in place at my words. His thin lips trembled, and he forced a pale smile. Impossible. You're lying to me. Right. With our 8 years together, I haven't moved on. How could you have moved on? I don't believe it. Emily, I know you're just acting out of spite, trying to make me suffer. Well, let me tell you, I'm suffering now. I know I was wrong. All this time, I've had no interest in anything. I've put company matters on hold. Right now, I have no thoughts except wanting you back. Can you forgive me? He rambled incoherently. Do you remember when we decided to get married? You promised you'd always be good to me, always love me. I know you enjoy going out, so I've already planned a trip. Look, for the next month, I'll be with you every day until you forgive me. As he spoke, he frantically pulled out his phone and opened the calendar. Just as he said, the next month was filled with travel arrangements, each day marked clearly with destinations, local snacks, or tourist spots. John had little patience and never liked making plans, always leaving it to me. It was obvious he was serious this time. Unfortunately, it was too late. I was about to say something when a woman's voice called out, Emily, weren't we supposed to watch a movie? Why are you still here? A sunny, cheerful guy in a white shirt and black trousers walked over to me and smiled as he wrapped his arm around me. This was the guy from reception, Michael Davis. We'd kept in touch occasionally since then. He'd bring me local specialty snacks and accompany me on trips to nearby cities. We shared common interests and had become close friends. Recently trying out dating. Seeing Michael, the color visibly drained from John's face. You are? Michael nodded, tightening his grip on my arm. I'm Emily's current boyfriend. I remember I handled your BB booking at Sima Lake. John's eyes widened. You. How can a receptionist be with Emily? He tried to use status to pressure Michael, to embarrass him. But it didn't work. Michael's smile remained bright. Why not? When two people are in love, does being together really depend on status? The only way to verify feelings is through feelings. Emily only needs to know that I love her and only her. And then we can be together. Similarly, I only need to know that you and Emily are divorced and she doesn't love you anymore. And I can accept her too. Saying that, as if in a show of defiance, Michael tightly held my hand again and gave me a bright smile. John was a bit on the verge of collapse. What a joke. He pointed at Michael, looking almost crazy. Did you say something to Emily that made her insist on divorcing me? You scoundrel. Dare you compete with me fairly in an open and above-board way? Michael laughed and raised our clasped hands. You might not understand yet. We're already together. Why would I need to compete with you? Moreover, I, a person who has only met Emily once, have already defeated you, who was with her for 8 years, even if we compete. Do you think you have any chance of winning? John was speechless. He stood there, completely stunned. It seemed that he had also experienced the powerlessness and pain I had felt before. Where 8 years of relationship was treated like nothing. He was about to say something when the phone in his pocket rang. It was his secretary calling. John answered the call. Without waiting for the other person to speak, he said reluctantly, "Inform everyone that the company will relocate next month." Then, looking at me defiantly, just as he was about to tell me the new address, the other person said anxiously, "We can't relocate. Mr. Williams, please come back quickly. Something big has happened to the company." After John hung up the phone, even though he was extremely reluctant, he left in a hurry. Later, I found out that Sophie had embezzled a large sum of money from John's company. And now the company's capital chain had broken, and all its business was in trouble. Everyone knew that John had placed great trust in Sophie. He gave her full trust, so the approval for the funds was very smooth. And Sophie hardly had to do any work. I also learned that there was originally a chance to stop the loss. When Sophie was withdrawing money from the bank, the approval was blocked. As long as John had paid a little more attention, he could have seen this notice. But during that period, John hadn't been to the company for a whole month. Before, Sophie had coaxed John into signing on a blank piece of paper. Using that signature, Sophie forged a proxy agreement, so the blocked funds were successfully transferred into Sophie's account just 1 day later. Now John's company was just an empty shell, and it even owed a lot of project funds. The cooperating companies came to the door one after another, demanding payment. Just from the news, I could feel John's pain and suffering, but perhaps out of shame, or maybe because he knew I wouldn't help him. This time John didn't contact me like he used to. Instead, a week after he learned the news, I saw a piece of news. John pushed Sophie off an 18-story building with his own hands and then committed suicide. Many people sighed about this. Many former colleagues also contacted me one after another. Looking at the overwhelming news, I calmly took out my phone card, broke it in two, and threw it out of the window. The past is over. My new life has just begun.